and welcome to Money Tips Podcast. This is Charles Kelly from London, bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate and enjoy more money. Now, excuse me if I'm not quite on camera here because I'm also recording this for my podcast, which goes out on iTunes, but I'm also putting it out live on Facebook Live as well, and I'll be putting this out on my YouTube channel, Charles Kelly Money Tips Podcast as well. Now, today in the UK, it's Friday, 27th of May. We're coming up to the weekend, and the big news this week is that the European Central Bank has warned that there could be a property correction. This is across Europe, I guess, but they're saying that the rise in prices, inflation, the faltering economy, and of course the war going on in Ukraine could actually push us into a property correction. Now, they don't use words like crash, but you've got crash, and then you've got slightly less than a crash is called a correction. Like in the stock market, we've probably already had a correction in the stock markets, which we've seen the Nasdaq go down by nearly 30% since its high. I mean, if that's not a correction, then it's almost a crash, But properties tend to move slower, and I think we'll see properties correct. A lot of agents are now saying that the market may have peaked, but they put that down to the massive surge in demand during the last couple of years when everyone wanted bigger properties, get out of the city, that sort of thing. So we may have seen a peak in property prices, but that doesn't mean it's going to crash, but it could just level off or slowly decline if demand declines. But obviously you've got a lot of commentators out there saying, oh no, it's going to be the biggest crash since 1929. Well, we don't know that because the central banks and the governments could prevent that by just pumping more money into the economy. We just don't know what will happen. But obviously the ECB is warning of this. Obviously we've got soaring inflation and fuel prices going up. And in the UK, the Chancellor has just had to slightly backtrack and backpedal by bringing in a windfall tax on the oil companies in order to satisfy the opposition and help people to get through this massive price rise. So what he's done is announced a £5 billion package. It's not his money, by the way, it's taxpayers' money. We have to fund this either through higher taxes or more borrowing. But he's announced this package, $5 billion, to ease the burden on these energy bills, which have gone up, enormously. I mean, even on my properties, they've just gone up, just stupid levels. They've doubled. Some people have gone up even more. And this is causing people real hardship where they don't know whether they can eat or heat. And in this day and age, when we're in the the most prosperous era in history, it's very sad that we have to come down to this. However, what he's doing is bringing in this package. Every household will receive £400. It's a kind of a rebate. It will be paid through our bills. So we'll get back, I think, something like £67 a month. And then this money is then paid back to us in the form of some sort of rebate or discount from the energy companies. If you're paying through a key meter, there's other ways of doing that. It might go onto your smart key meter. You may get a voucher. People who live on farms and that sort of thing and are not connected to the grid are not going to benefit from this. A lot of people in the countryside are complaining about that. But the poorest will also get £650 towards the cost of living. So yeah, there is some packages there. That's great. I can understand why the poor and disabled and the sick need this help, but most people need the help because they don't save, they don't manage their money, and they can't manage any kind of crisis, whether that means higher interest rates, car breaking down, things going wrong, and then they turn to debt and short-term borrowing. And in this case, it was, the government's got to do something. The government's got to do something. Well, I think the government could do something more to help this in an instant. And that is if the America and Europe, European Union and the UK change the way that they are applying these sanctions on Russia. Now, I could be accused of being treasonous for saying this, but why not exclude essential things like wheat and food and oil and gas from the sanctions? I'm not saying remove all the sanctions altogether, and if you're listening to this from Ukraine, you might not agree with this, but if we eased up those sanctions on people, then by say excluding essential things like oil, gas, natural gas. Most of Europe depends on this natural gas, and this is why we've got a shortage, and it's made the prices just go up like this, up in smoke. And so we're all suffering. So while the politicians say we're going to smash Russia and that sort of thing, Russia might be sitting back and saying, yeah, we're ready for that, just bring it on. We haven't got much national debt, we've got reserves, we can survive. And let's face it, does he really care about his people if they're starving? No. But then in the same way, we're caught in the crossfire between America, Europe and Britain. They're all fighting this proxy war in Ukraine, and they're suffering and we're suffering by higher inflation, which has reached record levels. Economies like the US dipping in the first quarter. The UK dipped in the last month. Inflation is now in double-digit figures. So we're all in the crossfire. So I think a change and perhaps jaw is better than war, as they say. Jaw is better than war. So why not talk to each other and say, look, okay, we're still going to impose sanctions, and we're still going to take your yachts and people that are not even the president's yachts, but they're taking them and their money. But let's exclude natural gas and oil and wheat products and these sorts of things from the sanctions, because these sanctions are hitting fertilizer prices, they're hitting food prices, these are going to come back in the next year to really hit us. So we're talking about fuel and that sort of thing, but these food it's going to cause food prices rising and food shortages. And in many countries we're seeing riots already. In parts of the Middle East and Sri Lanka, there are real problems there. So we've got to do something about this. This war could drag on for months until next year even. But in the meantime, people are going to be suffering. We can't keep bailing out the economy with more loans and more government borrowing paid back on the never never. We've already had this bailout in the last few years, and national debts have reached unprecedented level, like wartime levels. So let's do something about this, because this comes at a time when the US Federal Reserve is planning further restrictive measures to slow down the economy and increase interest rates to curb inflation. So that's going to definitely drive the US into recession. And there's an old saying that when America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. Well, when China sneezes, the rest of the world gets this virus and destroys the economy. But that's just a joke, by the way. So that's what's happening here. And what do you think of my suggestion? Put it in the comments if you think I'm making sense, or am I talking rubbish. Just say so. Say so in the comments. My suggestion is to change the way we're sanctioning Russia and exclude essential items like oil, gas, food, wheat and those sort of products, and fertilizer as well. I'd add to that list. If you want to stop selling McDonald's in Red Square, do that. But let's be sensible about this. We're caught in the crossfire. We need some action from this by the government. Don't just borrow our way out of this. Okay, now I also want to mention about estate agents and letting agents in general, because I feel that estate agents and letting agents are putting many buy-to-let landlords like me at risk. This is where you use an agent to find a tenant, to put a tenant in, or to manage the property. There are usually things like letting-only services, but there's also full management services where you're completely hands-off. They collect the rent, they deal with repairs, they deal with annual gas safety checks and that sort of thing. And you don't have to worry about it. You just get your money in less, maybe 8%, 10%, whatever they charge. And then you don't have to worry about anything. Of course, they will ring you and say, hi, there's a breakdown here that's going to cost £200 or £300. And you say, okay, go ahead. Or you say, no, that's too expensive, that sort of thing. So that's called management. But most people will go to a letting agent to find a tenant, to draw up the tenancy agreement, to deal with the paperwork, take up the references, and then in some cases either give them the keys or help them to move in. Now that process is fraught with problems if you don't do it right, and this is where I feel that a lot of letting agents are letting the sector down. Now, not all letting agents, not all estate agents are doing this, but there are a percentage that are badly trained. They're not keeping up to date with their CPD, the continuous professional development. They don't know what's going on. And you know, did you know that there's been so many changes in the last few years that they just can't keep up with it, a lot of them, especially the one-man band mom and pop operations. Now, there are currently, believe it or not, do you know how many pieces of legislation crisscross each other and affect buy-to-let landlords and tenants? Do you know? Have a guess. What do you think? 10, 15, 20? No, 160 pieces of legislation actually affect the buy-to-let landlords. Now, obviously, the main ones are the Housing Act and the Landlords and Tenants Act. But there are so many other things where it overlaps and crisscrosses with each other. Health and safety, environments, and all these sorts of things. Immigration, you know, right to rent, all these things crisscross over. So there's a big responsibility for landlords. And if the agent gets it wrong, the landlord is ultimately responsible, and they could not only be fined, not only not get possession of their property in the courts, but could go to prison if they get things wrong. Carbon monoxide deaths, if these things are not done and these things are not checked. You know, obviously everybody knows you have to have a smoke detector in a house, but did you know that these things expire? Not just when the battery runs out, but they have a use by date. And yeah, this doesn't happen very often, but you normally it triggers an alarm. But if somebody, if there's carbon monoxide in the property and the alarm doesn't, carbon dioxide in the property and it doesn't pick it up, then or a fire, carbon monoxide or a fire, and these detectors don't pick it up, and somebody dies in the property, it's not the letting agent will go to prison, it's the landlord. So this is what I'm saying, you've got to be very, very careful who you use, and also not completely rely on an agent, any agent, no matter how good, to know everything and do their job properly. You've got to check it yourself, because you are signing, you are liable there. It's a bit like my accountants used to say, sign this tax return, and they've done all the work, and you've relied on them to do it properly. But at the bottom, in the small print, it says I am liable for this. I am responsible for this. I have checked the figures. I understand all these figures. And sometimes, even if you didn't quite understand company accounts, you'd be signing them anyway because you're relying on them. But when the HMRC come back to do an investigation, they go after me, and the accountants say, we'll help you, and then they charge you to help you get out of the problems that sometimes they have put you into. You can take insurance for that, by the way. Anyway, back to property. I've been shocked to find out things that agents didn't know. For instance, you know, in my experience, I've found out that people depend on these agents, but actually they're not coming up to scratch. For instance, did you know that if you don't give the tenants things like a how to rent guide and the prescribed information documents, that this could result in a judge refusing to give back possession of a property? You know, let's say, for instance, you want to evict them because they haven't paid their rent or they won't leave at the end of the tenancy term, and you stand there before the judge and he looks down his glass, oh, where is the how to rent guide? Well, what's that? You know, and then I gave them that. Yeah, well, where's the proof that you gave it to them? Well, okay, I gave it to them, but I didn't get any proof that they've got it. And where is the prescribed information? Oh, the agent didn't tell me about that. You know, and then he says, right, case dismissed, go away, come up with all these things. You know, things like that can really affect if you haven't handled the deposit properly. I talked to a landlord recently who was keeping the deposit in her bank account. You know, these are big problems, and she used a letting agent. Another, you know, I could go on, but you know, a year or so ago, I went round to some agents who'd let properties for friends of mine, and I said, well, did you know that, you know, recently they've changed? You need these how to rent guide, the prescribed information. And they go, what information? What's prescribed information? And this was a letting agent that's been around for like 20 years. It was the oldest established letting agency in the area, and he didn't know. He didn't have a clue. He's retired now, and I think some new people have come in and taken over. But you know, often it's not. They're not doing this purposely. They're not bad people. It's just that they can't keep up with it all, and you know, they maybe they just get lazy. He was near retirement. I think he just had enough of it all and just got out. But they get lazy. They can't attend all the courses. When I go to landlord meetings and seminars and courses, and I never find any estate agents there. And they're the very people who should be there, because they need to keep up with this. It's not only government legislation, but it's local authority legislation where, you know, they can go in, and if you don't keep your property up to scratch, they can fine you up to £25,000. So you've got to be very, very careful here. And I think it's particularly prevalent in smaller estate agents, one-man band, mum-and-pop operations. You know, they're running around chasing their tails. I've been there. I've been a small business, so I know what it's like. You're trying to do everything. You're doing the marketing. You're doing the follow-ups. You're doing the VAT, the tax, and everything. So you just can't keep up with all this new stuff that's coming. You read about it, you think, oh, God, I'll read that later. But it's just too much to take in. And this is not so bad for nationals, because nationals and people that are part of a franchise network, they have the support, the backup, the training. They're forced to do CPD. They're forced to do courses and say, right, I understand that. I understand money laundering. I understand, you know, that you need a Legionella test in water tanks. I understand that, you know, you need to test the smoke alarms on the day they move in, not just assume that they're working and then record it. I understand that you have to give this and that, the prescribed information, the how to rent. And they have systems as well. Their system will usually produce everything. So you put all the information in, it produces the tenancy agreement, it produces the information, it produces the how to rent guide. All of that is done. And it's logged then. It's not just going back to paper and say, right, sign here, and then, you know, that could get lost, that could get mislaid. This is all on a system. And you can only have that really if you're part of an organization, because it's very, very expensive to put all that into place. You know, these software packages cost hundreds of pounds a month. And a lot of agents don't bother. They just use paper. So, you know, and even their letting agreements might not be correct. They might be out of date. Perhaps they're a copy of a copy of a copy. So you've got to be very, very careful. Now, I'm not trying to scare you, but I would use a reputable agent. I would ask if they understand all these things. You can find out these things very easily yourself anyway, online on the National Landlords website and that sort of. But I would ask about all these things, find out, and, you know, pick a reputable national company and somebody who really understands you and knows what they're doing, because the references is another area of importance. You know, do they pass all the referencing? Have they recommended insurance for you so that you wouldn't get loss of rent if the tenant didn't pay or had to be evicted? So all these things can be taken into account. Now, my experience of estate agents over the years has been very mixed. I've had some very good ones. I've got some good friends in the business, but overall the service level is poor. And, you know, estate agents are not liked in this country. They're not respected. They're up there with politicians and lawyers as the least trusted people in the country. And yet they're all trying to do a good job, but they've just got that bad reputation. Now, my poor service over the last 30 years of property investment has prompted me, believe it or not, to go into the business. I'm opening up my own estate agency business. Yes, people have told me, don't do it, Charles. It's a nightmare. Nobody will like you. Everyone will hate you. You know, nobody will thank you for anything. But I've decided to do it. It's something I've always been interested in doing. I've always thought about it, but never quite had the courage to do it. And now, because I'm in part of a franchise, that's given me the push and the backup and support, because I realised I could never do it on my own. But now I'm part of a franchise, which is Open House Estate Agency. They're a national franchise with 100 agents all over the country. I feel, yes, I can really do this now. So I'm launching, this is the first official announcement, I'm launching my own estate agency business, which will be called Open House South Herts. That's South Hertfordshire. I'll be covering areas of like Watford, parts of just outside North London really, Watford, Radlett, Bushy, and over to Boreham Wood and that sort of area, the WD6 area. That will be my patch, if you like. But I'll have a network of people all over the country. So I've had excellent training so far for myself and my staff, my team. There's excellent support there. And I've got the software package and the systems to run things properly, so that, you know, that prompts you to prompts errors. It means you're not likely to make mistakes that you would make on handwritten paper or typed paper. So I've got the systems there. I've got the training support. You know, I've been a week training now, and even though I thought I knew a lot, I found out a lot of things during that week's training. Intensive it was, really was intensive, and it still goes on because I've got to do online modules as well. But I've got to go through some fairly rigid registrations now. We're going to be part of the Property Ombudsman scheme, property redress scheme as well. So I've going through all that now, and I'll be launching sometime in June, so I'll keep you posted on that. But I'm really looking forward to it. It's a very exciting time for me. I will be an estate agent now, but I'll still keep doing these podcasts. I'm still doing my money coaching as well, but I'm gradually moving towards property coaching rather than just general money coaching. So that's because of where I'm going here. Now, if you want to get into property yourself, if you want to get into buy-to-let property, and you need some training, can I suggest some free training for you? It's a virtual webinar next Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. That's the 1st of June. It's called Property Investing Secrets. Now, I recommended one last week. Many of you might have missed that, but quite a few people did attend and said it was really, really useful. But if you'd like to learn the property secrets designed by the top industry professionals who've been in the market for a long time, it's 2 hours of really valuable content. It's not just going to be a sales pitch. It'll be really valuable content to show you how you can get started into buy-to-let properties, other types of strategies, also raise finance and build a mighty portfolio in property. Despite all the problems going on and all the government legislation, property is still a great investment in my opinion. And yes, there will be more red tape, but that will cut out some of the cowboys in the industry. And like with the estate agencies, I think these new rules are going to gradually weed out the people that just can't keep up, or the cowboys, or the people that unfortunately just won't do the training and CPD to keep up and current with legislation. And this is very serious because this is the biggest investment people make in their life in property. So it's really important that everybody gets this right. So all I want to say to you is great. I'm really looking forward to that. If you want to do that free training, click on the link below and you'll be registered. Now, tomorrow morning I've got UK Property Talk, 10 a.m. online, where I'll be talking about the number of properties, rental properties growing in the UK. It's incredible. And I'll be talking about how many rental properties and comparing the market with other nations, like the percentage of people who rent as opposed to buy here. And I'll be telling you which country has the highest percentage of actual property ownership compared to rentals in the world. And you will never guess what it is. Have a guess. Which country is it? Well, you'll have to watch tomorrow, 10 a.m. And I'll also be talking about agents as well, because the number of people falling through the net and getting expelled from the industry is growing. And the highest area for that is London. So join me tomorrow at 10 a.m. For the UK Property Talk. I'll put a link up here as well for that, so you can log in tomorrow on Zoom. That will be. But in the meantime, have a great day. It's Friday. Enjoy the weekend, and do check out my UK Property Talk webinar tomorrow, 10 a.m. Thanks a lot. Bye for now. Have a great day. Bye for now.